Every time this man gets off work, he takes a bath with a steel ball and soak in sterilized water for a day and a night. When he got home, he couldn't wait to undress his wife and then greedily feel the smell of the living because he works with dead people, even rotting, stinking corpses. What people don't realize is that John was an artist, but that ended when he took out a loan to buy a cello band. To pay off the loan, a friend offered him a job that paid $500,000 a day, but he was hesitant because the job required him to work with dead people every day. At first, John resisted, but the idea of earning $500,000 a day, he took the job. He regretted it on his first day of work because the victim had been dead for 2 weeks. Not only was the house crawling with maggots, even the body was so rotten that he couldn't even pick it up. The smell of decomposition made John vomit, although it didn't help much. Luckily, the boss was generous enough to pay his salary, but he couldn't be happy because he felt dirty. Then he went to the bathhouse and scrubbed himself with a steel wool ball. When he got home, his wife prepared a delicious meal for John after a long day's labor. But in John's eyes were filled with the carcass of a hen, and then he vomited. The wife tried to ask John what was wrong, but John did his best to tear off his wife's clothes and started sniffing at it. But the wife was clearly mistaken. Next day, John was thinking about how to quit his job. The boss received another order of business, so he had no choice. John had no choice but to go with his boss to the coffin again, and this was the first time he had ever seen a coffin. A man puts gauze in the mouth of the dead man, and they covered him with a quilt. Through the quilt, they took off the clothes of the deceased and then wiped the dead from inside out with sterilized water and come naked and leave without a trace of red dust. After wiping him clean, the man then puts the robe back on himself. The whole process must be solemn. When the deceased is dressed, the man closes the dead man's stiff arms around his chest. The next step is to apply makeup to the deceased because the deceased's skin is locked and easily injured, so the mortician can only wipe the skin gently and delicately. Everything is ready. The mortician asked the family to bring the deceased's lipstick, apply it carefully, and this means giving the deceased eternal beauty. This was the first time John felt the nobility of this job. Soon he was alone with many of the dead, but in Japan, this is a job that no dog would do, so John was still afraid to tell his wife what he did for a living. But in the end, no one can hide the truth. One day, his wife saw a promotional video for a funeral parlor, and the main character in the movie was John. John had no choice but to tell his wife everything. Unexpectedly, in return, his wife said, "Let's get a divorce." He wanted to stay, but his wife was so determined. After that, John planned to make $10 million and then stop, but he didn't expect the next victim to change his mind. The man became interested in the female corpse in front of him. He puts on a stick of incense, then he puts his hands together and prepares to put the dead body in the coffin. He lifts up the dead body's cover cloth and presses the skin with both hands to make the dead less stiff, then lift the blanket because the next step was to undress the deceased. John moved his stiff limbs, then he puts the covers back on and prepares to remove his clothes. The whole process was done in a seamless manner, and the family must never see the skin after the clothes are removed. The man takes the covers away, then a pan of fresh water is brought in. The next step was to scrub the victim's body, but as he was scrubbing, John suddenly stopped. The master was used to this kind of thing. He took the towel and reached in to double check. It turns out that the girl in front of him is really a man. He then asked the family if they wanted to wear male or female makeup. He got the family's consent. John carefully took out a makeup tray and applied makeup to the deceased. The final result was no different from the living. Since then, John has gained the master's trust, and John also made a lot of money through mortuary. He thought a happy life was waiting for him, but when his wife found out about his profession, she wanted a divorce despite John's efforts to stay, but she left him. Until a year later, after the death of his wife's relatives, the only mortician found was John. John went to the coffin as usual. He cleaned the dead man's face and body. Under the covers, he removed the clothes and replaced them with new ones. The whole process was as solemn as his master's, and most importantly, it was done with love, and his wife was deeply moved by it. Eventually, he accepted John's profession, and they lived happily ever after.